All right. Let's see if this works. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Common Mansplaining. Christian will be here in just a second. Welcome aboard if this is your first time joining us. Technically, we don't start for another 6 minutes, but we may end up getting started a couple seconds early. We'll see. Hope. Boom.
Hey, dude.
What's up? How's it going?
Good.
Welcome back to Common Mansplaining. Oh, man. What a speech last night.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was a good speech. Obviously, for those of us who've been following Trump very closely, the revelations were not as dramatic because we've come up and it's sort of, but yeah, it was a good job.
Yeah,
he laid it down.
I think maybe one of his best speeches ever. I mean, everything was. I noticed that in a lot of his speeches, of course, this follows the politics of the land. A lot of his speeches are kind of negative, right? Because he's usually attacking the bad policies of Biden or Harris or somebody else, right? Yeah. And so, but this one was very, very, very positive. Like, kept a positive tone even throughout some of the ridiculousness that was going on during the event. Yeah. So it's like. Number one, the fact that he's able to maintain that positive tone the entire time was great. You could tell he was having fun. Like, you could tell he was like toying with him and playing with him and acting the game. I mean, some of the things that he said were just like out of this world. Like, no other president in the world would ever say this kind of stuff, but it was just hysterical. I'm sitting there watching, giggling my butt off.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like gutsy stuff. But the Democrats deserved it. They were acting childs. They were, if anything, provoking him into his curlishness.
And let's talk about this for just a second, because if you're a Democrat, hey Mahmoud, how's it going? If you're a Democrat and you don't approve of the current administration, right? Just don't show up.
They were required to show up.
Well, were they? Because they all left. Right? Like, they obviously didn't have to stay. One of them was kicked out. Like, they obviously didn't have to be there. Right? So, like, if you're going to be disrespectful, if you're going to show up, right? If the requirement is that you show up and attend the president's speech, then show up and attend the president's speech. Don't show up and be an asshole. Like, holding up signs that are disrespectful, stopping the middle of it. Didn't they like lose their mind because they an official proceeding was broken, up prior? Like I thought that was their shtick, was that we never stopped these official proceedings. To do so is an insurrection and blah, 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 blah. And meanwhile, I'm like, come on.
Yeah, well, they want to be respected when they have power, but they want to show the ultimate disrespect when they don't.
Of course.
And really, it's going to go down. It's going to be bad for them. It's going to be something that will be thrown in their face and used against them. But, like, if you're going to get yourself back, you've got to do something that draws. I mean, I guess you're playing to their base, but that draws people towards you. And nothing the Democrats did last night made people like, oh, those are the people I want to be spending my money. I want to be sending checks to.
Right. Like, quite the opposite. In fact, like, I mean, I would, it's just like you've been talking about this entire time. They're all of these are like 20%, 30% issues. And they're just really planting their flag in it. Hey, Mahmoud, we're definitely watching. We're definitely listening. So anything you want to ask, let us know. Anything you want to comment about, just hit us with it, and we'll definitely get on it. So, yeah, I mean, we're talking about, and some of this stuff was like unbelievable. Like, some of this stuff is like, all right, okay. If you're a Democrat and you don't want to applaud things like Doge. Okay, whatever, right? Like it's obviously ideologically opposed to what you want. Oh, okay, whatever, right? I didn't expect that. If you don't want to applaud withdrawal from the WHO, whatever. If you don't want to applaud withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accords, okay, obviously these are like, things that you're opposed to. That makes perfect sense. But if you're not okay applauding a guy fighting brain cancer who was just awarded an honorary Secret Service title, like I'm at the point where we can't run this country together if you can't be on the same page about something stupid like that. Like
it shows right now that reactions are all knee jerk. Anything that comes from Trump cannot be acknowledged as a good, right? And that they're not going to be rational analysts of it, right? And so that's why it's so easy. You've seen the one conservative in the at CNN, Jennings is his name.
Yes, Scott Jennings.
Yeah. That he just sits back and watches their automatic knee-jerk reaction against something, and then he just sort of breaks it down. Okay, right? Why is this bad? Like,
just
ask a few things like, well, why would the government oppose somebody who's the head of the government? Anyway,
is this the government that president's the head of? Is that the one we're talking about? Like the one?
Yeah. And so in every way, it's like, oh, you're against brain cancer. Okay, so like people that survive brain cancer, you are officially, or no, it came from Trump. And this is right. What's showing what I've said time and time again too, is the Democrats are too emotional about government, emotional about issues.
Yep.
Right? They're emotional about Trump. And this is just the limbic emotional part of their brains have complete control over their decision making right now.
Yep.
And what we need, right, is, and what we'd hope, right, is those who are thinking can use their neocortex and analyze, is this good? Is this bad? Not emotional. Trump said this. I have negative emotions. And so it's not leadership. It's not anything that type of petulant whining that we got from the Democrats is not anything that makes us trust them to run the government effectively.
Right. This is like
a Biden type of is the best case scenario in that situation, right?
Yeah. I mean, some of this stuff was just disgraceful. I mean, when I'm glad that Mike Johnson was on it. Like, I'm glad he was on point. He was ready for the whole thing. He had the decorum rules right in front of him, knowing that they were going to start. Of course, they were forecasting it, that they were going to cause a ruckus. But like, just unbelievable. The fact that Al Green, like, okay, we're not talking about the good singer Al Green, but the bad rep Al Green. The fact that he wouldn't just sit down and watch the show. See, like, what are you thinking at that point? Like, it's just so stupid that you have to get, like, what a petulant little baby that you have to be removed from the room and put in timeout by the sergeant at arms. Like, wow. How old is this guy? Like 4? That's unbelievable. Like, we got to send you to timeout. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then you got people that are like falling asleep. You got people that are like texting on their phones. I'd be like, if I would have sent the sergeant at arms, like, all right, we're going to need to, I guess, since we're doing this, right? Since we're all in kindergarten, let's put all your phones in the box. You can have them when class is over. Oh my God. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you talk about the most important Democratic Republic in the world, right? The most important people, right? The elected congressmen, senators, officials, everybody that wanted to be in that room. So many people that wanted to be in that room couldn't be, and they are just completely disrespected.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, like, and when I look at some of the stuff they couldn't applaud for, it's like this is like the Democrats planting their flag in the opposite camp, right? So like take for example, they couldn't applaud Marco Rubio, who they all voted for.
Yeah.
Right? They all voted for him. Rubio is the only person to be confirmed, if I'm not mistaken, with 100 votes, right? Like a flawless 100 vote count. Now, if you're ready to vote for him, why can't you applaud him? All right, they didn't applaud for no taxes on tips, no taxes on Social Security. This was their platform. They stole it from Trump, and we're going to use this same stuff. And then now it's not good enough because Trump's doing it, right? And again, see, that's like Trump victory stuff. I'd even be okay with that. But when it gets to the point where like you're not okay with applauding a kid with brain cancer, when you're not okay with applauding a girl who's like literally her kids were killed by like gang members, when you're not okay with like applauding the family who's taking a bullet at a presidential rally, that's next level crazy.
Look, this is how knee-jerk and against the Democrats are. They are willing to defend angrily money laundering. They have taken the side. We must continue to have this money laundering, and this fraud must not stop because we're not the ones stopping it.
Money laundering, the cartels. Like Trump is like, guess what, guys? We just named them terrorists, and they're like, cricket. It's like, so are you trying to tell me that you're in favor of the cartels? Like, I don't know. What are you trying to tell me here? Like, he's like, all right, we just picked up the guy who bombed at Kabul airport, right? Like Pakistan arrested the terrorist that bombed the Afghanistan withdrawal. And they're like, crickets. I'm like, are you trying to tell me that you're cool with people bombing your service members? Is that the Democrat official position now, that you're good with all this stuff? Like, that's outrageous. Like, you would think, I mean, maybe, I don't know. Maybe I don't know how this political strategy works. Obviously I don't, right? I'm not a politician. This is the common man talking, right? So I don't know what's going on, but I would have told him, like, at least stand up for this, stand up for that, stand up for this. When he talks about Doge, okay, state your protest, sit down, don't do anything, whatever, right? But like, this stuff should be some of this stuff should be so easy to stand for that it's I can't fathom how it could possibly be politically advantageous to not.
So what they're playing to is, yes, the Democrats, and they've cultivated this, people that have a very negative emotional reaction. But Trump is very unlikable in his personality, his mannerisms, his speaking style. And they want to amplify that. And they want to attach more negative emotions to anything that comes from Trump. Not the substance, just the mannerism of it. And so obviously, as common men, we should see through that. We should see through that type of propaganda, that type of spinning. They're trying to layer and taint something as negative. Well, we see it for what it really is a celebration of overcoming cancer. These are good things. And when you come down to the issue, when you're not emotional about it, look, we're not insiders. We're not incentivized to promote or cheer Trump at all. We have issues with him from time to time, but there are things that he's right about, and we should not just oppose it.
Right. So yeah, Tiffany, we're talking right now. We're talking about the speech that Trump made last night, which was a very rousing rally, a very rousing speech. And what's funny, what we're discussing now is that even though a lot of the items that Trump discussed in his speech were very, very basic, very just like generically good things like, we have somebody that was fighting cancer and they made him an honorary Secret Service agent, just gave this guy an award, right? There was a guy who wanted to be in West Point. That was his dream. All he wanted to do was be in West Point. He had an outrageous good, GPA. He was like a 6-letter varsity sport athlete. And they gave him a position at West Point, right? Like, this should be stuff that no matter who you are, you're okay with, you're happy about, right? This should be stuff that no matter what your politics are, no matter where you come from, no matter how little you follow it, like, everyone should be in on board with this. And yet the Democrats would not stand and applaud not a single item. The only item they did applaud was when Trump was like, we've been spending, he's been talking about them blowing money on Ukraine.
Right.
And then nobody else applauded but them. They're sitting there applauding. He's like, and this was a great line too. He's like, what did he say? He said, you want 5 more years of this? 5 more years of this? He's like, Pocahontas says yes. I almost fell out of the couch. Pocahontas says yes. So for those of you guys who aren't as familiar, Pocahontas is Elizabeth Warren, who's got like who claimed to have like 0.01%.
She claimed to be Cherokee.
Yeah.
And she's not. She is not a member of the Cherokee tribe. Anyway. And
so now he calls her Pocahontas. That is hysterical.
Now the thing I'd like to talk about, rather than just the dunk points, which I think will resonate for a while. But he did talk about, right, soberly, that there will be some pain points.
Yes.
Right? That right? He laid it out with his tariff plans. There's going to be some pain in the short term. Right? This is a long-term strategy. The short term would be if China, Mexico, and Canada all lift their tariffs against us, then he's prepared to do the same.
Right.
But in the short term, we're going to have to reduce our consumption. There's going to be problems.
Yes.
And in naming the cartels terrorists, right? There's going to be some pain in the short term. There's going to be some violence. There's going to be some loss of life. There's going to be some disruption around that border. And one of the things we saw was Mexico, making a show, closing their border today, like a custom thing, pulling the fence across. We'll see how that lasts, but they did at least get the press there to cover that event, so they did it. And we'll see some things, that Trump is willing to ruffle feathers, even of friends. And, and it's because we're the most powerful, wealthiest country in the world. We're strong enough to do that. That's generally called out as bullying. When you're in a position of strength, you use your strength for your advantage. But he's really just using our strength to even the playing field. We've been taking advantage. He said, why should we, from a position of strength, be dunked on by you?
He definitely does like to ruffle
feathers.
Let me ask you this. So you know my position on tariffs, right? I'm not crazy about them, but to be fair, like I've said many times, it's a principled objection, not a pragmatic objection. So it may be that tariffs perform well. I just don't like it for the principle of it, not because of whether or not it will or will not do well. I don't know. I don't know enough about tariffs.
Be against. Why is Canada tariffing our products coming to their citizens? Right. And Trump. So that's why still the theory is he can still kind of be anti-tariff. He's just anti-unequal tariff.
Well, so now let me ask you. So that's my question. Is he? So I don't know, because it's tough to read Trump sometimes. I'll be honest. He's not a bad poker player. He keeps a good poker face, and he keeps his stuff tight to the vest. Do you think that Trump is so he talked about reciprocal tariffs, right? Do you think that he's against the uneven distribution of tariffs, or do you think that he actually just believes in tariffs as like economic policy, like that's his theory?
So no, when you want to, he wants reciprocal tariffs. They're a negotiation point, just like as JP Bad just said there. Yeah, in theory, right, economic theory, if you want what's called a revenue tariff, something that generates wealth for your country, what you do is you do like a 3% tariff on something, right? It means the good comes in, and then the government, it doesn't really drop consumption that much, and the government makes all this revenue off it. If you put a 25%, 50% tariff on something, 100% tariff on something, it's going to stop that sale, and you're actually going to generate very little money for the government. Right. So he's doing that more as a strategic thing and reciprocal, because he wants to negotiate it with the other countries. Maybe after everything's sorted down, if he wants to generate money for the federal government, right, saying, hey, if you want access to us, maybe a 2% tariff, but it's really just revenue for us or something like that. But these big tariffs that he's talking about, which will disrupt and raise prices and things like that, that should be a short-term negotiating strategy, provided, right? So Canada's making a big show of it, right? They're taking whiskey off their shelves and doing things like this. But in the long term, this should, if we have the strength, have a leader who can persevere long term, it's going to hurt Canada more. And it's going to be more in their interest to meet Trump's negotiating demand because and remove the tariffs they have on American products if they want to sell their products here without tariffs.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. So yeah, you're right. There's a couple of people that are playing chicken with us right now. But one of the things that they have to understand is that, it's like you said, reading Art of the Deal. I have actually begun, and it's a very interesting read. It's a very interesting insight into the way that Trump works, because it really is like his life in a nutshell. It tells you a lot about how he thinks, tells you, and he really does approach like the entire world as a deal. And it's incredible because some of the things that he does, it's more about the deal than it is about the result. It's crazy. It's like, like sometimes the journey is more important than the destination. And I think that's very much the case with Trump. Like, he almost enjoys the art of the deal more than he enjoys getting the positive result from it. But you're right. When it comes to like countries like Canada, Mexico, they don't really have much to like threaten us with. Like, one thing that people forget is that America is one of the very few nations in the world that can be truly self-sustaining. We don't need anybody else. Like, we really don't. There's almost no other nation in the world that's like that. And almost no other nation in the world is large enough, diverse enough with natural resources to literally take care of all of our problems without, sure, we'll lose a couple of things like maple syrup or something like that. Like, we'll lose a couple of stupid things that like really don't affect anybody's life to a considerable degree. But in the long run,
we can get uranium more cheaply mined from South Africa. We can get more cobalt and other rare earths more cheaply from Ukraine, China, or other places like that. We can do it.
Not anymore.
Well, right. It's the environmental lobby that's really stopped us from exploiting those resources.
Right.
Right. To hold back like the Arctic and Alaska. So I think I've told you about this before, like the Salton Sea.
Maybe refresh my memory.
So the Salton Sea is a man-made lake in Southern California.
Okay, yeah.
In Southern California. And it was when they were doing some of the early dams and levees for the Colorado River, it floated in and flooded this area. Anyway, they've stopped that. There's not excess water in the Colorado River anymore. Very few people live out there. It is good farmland as long as you can irrigate it. Otherwise, it's a godforsaken desert.
Right.
But they found as this lake receded, it's a really good place to mine lithium. Right? Which we want, right? And other rare earths. That's a good place for rare earths. But the California environmentalists don't want to mine for lithium or rare earths, right? They want that stuff overseas. They don't want to have mines here in the U.S. And so we will need strength. We will have to overcome some things and have leaders. Obviously, the Democratic leadership in California won't stand up to it. But if the federal government can get behind it, then we could have things and really be self-sustaining. And those are some changes that need to be made, right? We saw, I don't know if you saw that big announcement that Taiwan chip maker is going to do a several billion dollar microchip plant in Arizona, I believe.
I think, it was Arizona, New Mexico, something like that.
Yeah, Arizona. And a huge investment, right? So we're not tied to having all chips made in Taiwan, right? And that's going to be a lot. But there's been something like they've been trying to build a microchip plant like that in North Carolina, Chatham County. There's one in Utah that they built, and then when the price of chips fluctuated, they got blown out of the water by the cheap chips coming from Taiwan. But now with things coming, it might make more sense for them to make some microchips at this place. So anyway, there'll be changes in the short term until production gets up. It's going to be tough, but I
got to be honest.
It is more ideological right now than strategic.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So I got to be honest. I'm really happy about some of the. I mean, I'm not a protectionist overall, but there are definitely some items that need to be domestic, right? They just need to be for us to maintain our self sufficiency, for us to maintain our leverage and our position of power. Like for example, superconducting chips need to be in America. Like that's just to me that's a non-negotiable. And I think that one of the things that I was happy with, ironically, one of the few things that I was happy with that Biden did was the Chips Act. But I think Trump's strategy is even better. It's an upgrade on that strategy, which is to get much more domestic production here in America, and then we won't need that. And then like if we ever get into war, right? And if Taiwan is ever a thing that's fought over, and it may have been, it certainly seemed like it might have been on the docket over the last couple of years. Number one, it removes one of the reasons for them to fight over Taiwan, for China to fight over Taiwan. Number two, it puts the all the leverage firmly in our side of the playing field, and then we don't have to worry about it. Like if for some reason they overtake Taiwan in a swift thing that we weren't ready for, we're still fine, right? And everybody, the rest of the world is still fine. Matter of fact, might even ramp up our sales, right? It might even put us on the map as the premier chip producer. And there's some other things like steel, like auto industry, some of the key items, the stuff that made us, America prosperous over the years, over the industrial revolution. Let's see. So think about what the chip deal does with China. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Sends China a message, sends China, the message that we're not going to let any vulnerability like that be so now the one thing I will say, I mean, there is a level to which even I am sympathetic of other nations' needs, right? Like I don't want to leave Taiwan without any reason to exist, and that's basically their sole reason economically to exist. So I do see that there is some game to be played as far as letting some people shoulder the burden. And there's another layer too that's a little bit more complex, and that is as America has one of the reasons we're so productive pound for pound is because as things are manufactured, we're doing the final element, the composition and construction element. We're doing like the last job in a typical industrial chain of events. And so one of the reasons that we can command so much extra money for our efforts, so the reason our GDP is so high per person is because we're doing the last and most valuable part. Now, if we obviously Trump wants to do all of the parts, but there is a case to be made for keeping our jobs as valuable as we can per person. And there's an element of that. So we just as long as we balance that, we should be fine. Like we just don't want to get to the point where we're doing the dollar a day labor, right? Like we don't really want to be in that job because we obviously can't do it for $1 a day for humanitarian reasons and stuff like that. Not that I'm claiming that other people should be doing it for $1 a day, but you get what I'm saying.
They
Like,
want at high quality and with automation, right? They're untapped. I guess part of the thing is, right, that to a large degree they didn't think that people like in the Southwest, right, like Arizona, could be good factory workers, right? They thought factory workers were only from the Midwest or Northeast, right? And that has largely, right, the cars can be made in Tennessee or Alabama or North Carolina, and that's largely been debunked, right?
right.
And we've seen factories and other people move things too, right? South Carolina is a big hub of planes, other vehicles, right? All the foreign Mercedes builds all of their vehicles that they don't sell in Europe, builds them all in South Carolina, as well as other things. So we can do manufacturing, and it's less expensive, and actually makes sense to do it in red states that have
Yeah.
a good legal framework, and you don't have to result to corruption, anything like that. Too, you don't have to worry about having your assets nationalized.
And less
So
regulated.
there are lots of good reasons to come to the U.S. With the latest manufacturing, but it's like capitalism. You have to be good at it. If you come here and run your factory poorly, you're going to fail. Right?
Yeah, I have
out.
to. I have to applaud JP Bad. I wanted to go here too. I even have it written down.
Sure.
That I too am a little bit worried about BlackRock being the bid for the ports at the edges of the canal. That bothers me. I have to be honest with you. I mean, the guy in Hong Kong, I mean, it's probably better than China owning it, but maybe not much. Like, I don't know. I think long term, I think BlackRock may be just as dangerous as China, and
All right,
that's
so educate me on why some BlackRock, who's so heavily invested in American economic, right?
well, sure.
Owns so many stock in American companies, things like that. And they're wealthy behemoth, right? And a lot of people don't know about them. Why do you think that would be? They'd be disloyal to American, or that would? Why is that vulnerability? I don't see it. Maybe
Sure.
you and TP Bad can educate.
Sure. So yeah, and it's like JP Bad says, it is kind of a conspiracy theory. So this is going to be a spicy take for those of you out there. Take it with a grain of salt. But there's a couple of things to understand. Number one, BlackRock is the number one company in the world. They're the biggest, the strongest, the number one. They're the strongest. They're the most financially resourced. They're the most heavily invested in and of course they're an investment company, so that's what they do. But like, if you were to look up literally any company in America, almost any company in America, like, you look up the top 30 companies and you'll see that the top owners are always BlackRock, Vanguard, SSGA, like on down the line, and almost always in that order, right? Like, this is the top dog company. Now, we've got rules against monopolies, but Blackguard has very carefully and skillfully evaded them for a long time, because what they do is, instead of having total control over any one industry, they've got these like crab legs that have spiraled into literally every industry on earth. And they're not just invested in America, right? That's a key point to understand. They're invested in everything all around the world, like everything. It's not just us, right? So it's important to understand that it's not. I don't even know if it's fair to call them like an American company. I mean, they are. They may be slightly more heavily invested here than.
You know who owns the majority of BlackRock shares is Bank of America.
Vanguard.
Was it Vanguard? I thought it was Bank of America.
Well, Bank of America does too, yeah.
Who has a large banking, their international banking is based there in Panama.
Yeah.
They might be very interested. They might feel having BlackRock in charge is more stable. It's stabilizing for them.
Yeah, it's all like.
That's why I'm willing to give them a chance. Obviously, if what would the negative do? What would BlackRock do? What, charges high fees, deny our Navy access?
Yeah.
Like, what's the negative outcome that you see? That's what.
So all right, let's put it in this context, right? And I've said this in other videos on this channel before. The fear that both the left and the right share is gigantism, right? What I mean by that is, the left wants to keep corporations from getting too big, right? That's what their fear is. Their fear is that a corporation gets too big and then is able to exert so much influence that they can no longer be stopped, or that they can run the politics, right? And so ironically, they're afraid of people like Elon Musk, when BlackRock exerts far more influence. And you notice they didn't say a word when BlackRock, like, you didn't hear anything in the media about the left not liking the fact that BlackRock bought these ports. They didn't say anything about it, because BlackRock is as heavily lobbied into the left as they are in the right. They own everything. Now, here's the problem, right? And the right, likewise, hates the gigantism in the government, right? And for good reason. But that's a source of shared understanding, right? That's a source that we can both come together on and say, neither one of us want someone to get so powerful that they can no longer be stopped. Now, here's the threat.
They can restrict our freedoms, right? Yeah. Government gets too bad, our corporations get too powerful, our freedom starts becoming restricted.
Correct. So understand that I would currently place BlackRock's overall influence at somewhere equivalent to a large near peer adversary. Maybe not quite, quite as strong as America, but like, they're almost as powerful as, say, Russia. If BlackRock were to tomorrow say, all right, look, do this or we're pulling out, boom, like cold turkey, boom. I think that a lot of chips would fall. I think that a lot of dominoes would just like blip, 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 because both, like I said, both sides are bought and owned by this company. Both sides are lobbied heavily by this company. And if they're not, they're lobbied heavily by people that this company owns. And so it ends up being the same thing. Every time that I have looked in the past year, and matter of fact, past 3 years, since I've been doing this like political, acknowledgement, and since I've been on this journey of being politically aware, every time I've seen a situation where, like, a lot of times it's the left fights the right, right fights the left, and it's a lot of theater. But then every now and then they both come together. All of a sudden, miraculously, like they're both all of a sudden in favor of the Ukrainian war. They're both all of a sudden in favor of the Patriot Act. They're both all of a sudden in favor of blah, 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 blah. Every time I look at who's behind it, it's BlackRock. Every single time. And it's like JB Bad said, this is another conspiracy theory to tack onto this. But do you know that both of the people that took shot at Trump were in BlackRock commercials? I mean, that's outrageous. Now, don't get me wrong. That could just be coincidence because they're big. Like I said, this is a big company. But holy crap. Yeah. Like, holy crap. And this is, I just got to say, I don't know. I think if BlackRock gets to the point where they decide to start actually leveraging things, and I think they already are. I think they already are leveraging a lot under the table where we don't see. I think a lot goes on underneath the waters. And, you see the duck's back on the top. It looks calm and serene, but under the waters, they're paddling furiously, right? I bet you that's BlackRock all day long. I can't prove it because I'm not underneath the water to see. But I can tell you that they scare me. I can tell you that they scare me as much as big government scares me.
Well,
saying that they are competing.
Yeah, they can wield that control for good in international, like in these trade wars or these things, make it as a positive for the U.S., kind of like having Superman be from Kansas. Hey,
they could, but I think that goes both ways. I think they do, but I also think that like little things like all right, there was some kind of World Economic Forum event not too long ago where the goal was to get America to like sign up for CBDCs and central bank digital currencies, for those who are not CBDCs, which I believe are like essentially the death of freedom, right? But BlackRock threw their weight behind it. Now, I don't think they threw their full weight behind it. I think it was kind of like a favor they were doing somebody or something, as opposed to like a direct agenda item. But I just think that it's dangerous when stuff like that comes along, and then America hangs by a thread, right? We have its huge strength in that we're not run directly by the mob, but we also have the weakness of the fact that the moment, the republic is corrupted, then there's nothing that the mob can really do to stop it, at least not in real time. So it's a give and take. It's part of our checks and balance system, and it's always going to have strengths and weaknesses. And that's one of the weaknesses. One of the weaknesses is if they can get enough people bought off, what can we do? But what can we do?
Well, corruption, yeah, in the government, corruption in the civic, is a threat to our republic. So yeah, so we need to expose that. If that has, he's mentioned something about smuggling. Right now, because of its exposure, as a common man, I'm not exposed to, other than this is their influence could be used for evil. I'm not exposed to more actual examples of the malfeasance. I think they were too heavily tied to Dick Cheney, and so the left or the media painted them a little bit darkly.
Right.
But if they're lobbyists for them, they're certainly not lobbying to improve their name in the media. Nobody, I mean, their commercials are not really trying to like yay BlackRock. Like nobody does. They're sort of like a wholesaler, right? Nobody has, a Fortune 5 company like maybe the fifth biggest country in the world is a company called McKesson.
I've heard of that. Yeah,
Right?
but
Maybe you've seen
I
their
don't know
trucks. They do wholesale medical goods for running hospitals and running things like they're not like developing, but once anything goes generic, anyway. But they're so big, they're not spending things like, hey, we should love McKesson because it's kind of unsexy product. BlackRock is sort of unsexy. Whether maybe public opinion doesn't matter to them.
Well,
That might be, maybe they've reached that level.
Well, it's also too. It's like, all right, so something that you to understand about BlackRock is that they don't have to advertise directly, right? Because if Coke advertises, that's BlackRock advertising. If Northrop Grumman advertises, that's BlackRock advertising. If Walmart advertises, that's You see where I'm going with this? Like, they don't have to do it, right? Like BlackRock, and I think they like it that way, right? I think they like being the guy behind the guy. I think they like being the guy in the shadows that can pull the puppet master that can pull all the strings, because the strings that do advertise, sure, we're all on board for Walmart's a good American company, right? Like, we're all on board for Coca-Cola. We're all on board for but then behind the guy is the more dangerous element who owns 20% of Coke and 20% and 20% and 20% and 20%. And it's like, you only go so far before you have too much power. I don't know what the magic number is. Like, you tell me. Like, once you're $1 trillion business, once you're a quadrillion dollar business, where do you get to the point where you?
I don't think size, right? I don't think money itself is evil, right? Maybe the love of money is the root of all evil. And so if their motivation is money, like, I don't think Elon Musk is motivated by money right now.
Right.
I don't think he's interested in being rich. He wants to succeed, and that's part of his appeal to me. But if BlackRock is motivated just by love for money, then that can lead to corruption. And we need to be vigilant for corruption on all sides.
Sure.
Now, not to segue too much, but let's take a minute to read some of the questions or comments.
Yeah,
anybody who's watching us live, if you have something you'd like us to discuss, I know Trump made a pretty spicy take about Palestinians today. I don't know if anybody's interested in that. But let's see. What do you think some of the comments are? I just want to read some.
Yeah, so he says they leave. All right, so Dean Doctrine says they love money, they don't care about fame. You're probably right about that. I think, like I said, they like being behind the curtains. I think it's funny. Me too, by the way. Like, I maybe have chosen the wrong profession, because I don't know that money comes without fame in this social media business, but who knows? I'd rather, if I could somehow miraculously not be famous but still be rich, I'd do it. But yeah, the Golden Dome, I like that one. I love that Trump wants to do you heard about the Golden Dome, right? So this is going to be like the new Iron Dome, like the new iteration of Star Wars, which is, basically, a magical shield that stops all of the missiles. I got to say, I'm praying that it works. I have my doubts, because hypersonic missiles have moved very, very quickly in technological advancement in the last, couple of years. So Israel, to be clear, Israel has something different. Israel's program stops rockets, right? And it's a big difference. So the difference between like a rocket and the kind of intercontinental ballistic missile that we need to shield ourselves from is it's like the difference between a gun and a bazooka. Like, what the stuff that you could put a piece of metal between you and a gun and you might be all right. You can't put a piece of metal between you and a bazooka and be okay. And that's the maybe not a great analogy, but you're not going to be able to stop a hypersonic tactical nuke with just like a rocket deflection program, like a Patriot missile system.
Especially if it's launched from a submarine 10 miles offshore.
Yeah, right? Gosh, or even, the North Pole or something like that.
I feel like our missile defense, obviously it's classified. I have no secret clearance, so I'm not speaking with any type of direct knowledge. But from people that I've encountered who talk about it as much as they can, I feel like the major population centers of East Coast place have the best protection, coupled
Yes,
by the propulsion centers on the west. And we've put most of our missiles, nuclear missiles, in North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, parts that are very sparsely populated. So if our enemies target those, right?
yeah.
The
So
population centers. So we're not really interested, but maybe a Golden Dome would protect all of America. That's
so
enough.
I can talk a little bit about this. I do actually, believe it or not, have a top secret clearance.
Okay.
Believe it or not, because I was in the military. I was ex-Navy. I served on a nuclear vessel. So, I had access to that kind of information to an extent, right? There's some things that I cannot share with you. There's information, and it's probably out of date too, but I don't know. And as long as I don't know, I'm not going to say anything. But one thing that I can tell you is, from the information that I've gotten most recently, we can probably deflect about 1 out of 10 from what Russia has. That's a very dangerous number. I'd like to change that. I'd like for Golden Dome to bring that up to like 9 out of 10. Right. And I'm not sure exactly how they're going to do it.
I've heard analysts saying they think most of their weapons are aimed at Minot, North Dakota right now, anyway. Where
I don't think, as far as where they're aimed, I don't know how they could even tell. Like, it's not like, nuclear arms aren't something where you have them aimed. You have a coordinate in a system, right? And like, they wouldn't have the coordinates.
Really?
Right?
They wouldn't know a coordinate?
Very unlikely. I mean, do you think someone knows the coordinates that are punched in on? First of all, it usually doesn't work like that. It's not like you have coordinates that are just sitting in there, like waiting to be. Usually, what you have are different strike packages, and you can just be like strike package A, strike package F, strike package Y, and it comes with the code. So someone's going to say, they'll call you up, say strike package Omega, and then this is my code. It's third from the top, da 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 da, and then you fire. And so they'll go in. It's not like no one's going to know where it's going until it's fired. Now, after they fire it, you'll know. But it's depending on how fast the missile flies. If it's going at 5,000 miles an hour, it's not going to matter how quickly you get it. By the time you ascertain the trajectory, you need to have it down, or else you're in trouble. Now, that having been said, some of the older stuff might be like that. It might be like actually on a turret aimed, but most of the newer stuff is not going to be like that. The other side to this too is that even if we had the thing aimed, right? If this stuff like again, if it soars right over the horizon and we don't have any way to track it until it gets over the curvature of the earth, and it's like really low to the ground, and then it's flying at a very, very high speed, it's not going to matter. Like, what can you do to stop that? I mean, even when we were on board a ship, so in the Navy, they had this thing called a phalanx system, right? You were like, each ship would supplement the other's sensory ability. So if someone were to fire a missile at you, like, or a torpedo or anything like that, all of the ships would try to track it at the same time, and in doing so would be much, much faster, much better, much more accurate than normal. And even so, like, just being on our ship, they said like a single jet had about a 5-to-1 shot of sinking the ship. Like, that's outrageous. A single jet, just because they can fire these like little phantom missiles that are like only like 5 meters off the ground. Being able to track that is outrageous. Like, sometimes it doesn't even crest the wave, like literally. And then, you have to be able to track it. You have to be able to stop it. You have to be able to shoot it. Now, I'm hoping they've got some kind of, I don't know about the new technologies coming out as well. Out of the new platforms are kind of hidden, even from me, even from people I know. But I hope that they have some kind of system that's like an electromagnetic shield that like stops communication. So as a missile crosses a threshold, it can no longer track. Like, kind of like an EMP, only like in a bar, like a wave, so that it crosses over. They have something like that for drones. I know that they have something like that for drones, but I don't know if you can do that for a missile that's moving 3,000 miles. I don't know. I don't know enough about the tech to know that.
New tech is interesting, and I don't. You say you don't know, or it's classified. If we have strategies to stop it, you don't think it's stoppable.
I know we have some things, right? But there's only so much that you can do. There's only so much that you can do. If a missile is coming across at Mach 10, and it's low to the ground. It doesn't, barely breaks the curvature of the earth, barely breaks the horizon until like it's 100 miles away. I mean, you know how fast something moving Mach 10 can cover 100 miles? It's like a minute and a half or something like that. It's like outrageous. It's very, very quick.
Yeah.
It's, there's nothing you can do about that. So 10 minute, if you've got a 9-minute and 80-second, 9-minute and 50-second response time, what are you going to do? Like, and keep in mind, humans usually need to be involved in this. So one thing I hope the Golden Dome does is automate a little bit, make it so that it takes the human element out of it, so we can track automatically, strike automatically. But even so, that's dangerous.
Like a net in the sky.
Yeah, right.
What would be a name for that? What would be a name for that? Like a
Golden dome.
A sky net.
Let's see. Yeah, how no cell phones. Yeah, yeah, most people don't realize how we didn't have cell phones back in the day. I didn't have a cell phone until I was like 28, 25, maybe something like that. 25. Yeah, I didn't. I was a late bloomer in the cell phone world.
I was an early bloomer. I was in 1997. I had a cell phone, but I didn't use it. Like, I'm like, why do I have this? But it was back when it was like I'm never going to use this thing. Who wants to make phone calls? I don't want people calling me when I'm at the John or.
Yeah, now it's indispensable. Now I can't imagine my life without it. But yeah, Skynet's coming. We're definitely one of my biggest bugaboos on the site is AI. I'm worried about AI becoming a problem, and I think that's going to be part of the game here, right? Part of our defensive technology is going to be AI run. Part of their offensive technology is going to be AI run, which is like, to me, I'm sitting there like, no, please don't. So, and it's going to come now. Hopefully, what the utopian AI theorists are saying, they're hoping that instead of like an actual conflict, what happens is like this intense behind the scenes communication between these two AIs who like basically resolve the difference without us even knowing. Like they say, look, if I do this and then you do that, this is what's going to happen. So can we figure something else out? And then they solve the problem.
Daily they negotiate and say, all right, we won't end the world today. Daily, every day they together and be like, oh no, not today.
I hope that's the case, but then again, I'm also afraid for that being the case, because I'm afraid for the day where AI makes a decision that I'm just like heartily against. Like, what if they're like, all right, listen, we solved the problem. There's no world war, but in order to do that, you have to give up your freedom of speech. I'm like, oh hell no.
Yeah.
Hell no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to stop bad mouthing Russia just to keep them from shooting me with a missile. Screw that, and then
right. So the wild cards are then right. So you still have bad actors who could release some sort of biological agent, right? That and they can do, well, if you come to us, we can cure it, or so that's the type of thing too. Like, where do you stand on gain of function research and whether we should be offensively prepared, against that type of biological warfare?
Well, I tell you what, obviously it's against international law.
Yeah.
Right. And that should be easy enough to solve all of the problems behind it. But that having been said, even if you were like ideologically in favor of gain of function research as a means of preparing yourself, I can't imagine, like, some stupid ratty little lab in Wuhan is not sufficient, right? This needs to be top of the line. Did you ever see that movie? Okay, you've probably seen Outbreak, right, with Dustin Hoffman. Great movie. Have you ever seen that movie with it's called, God, what is it called? It's
Contagion.
Contagion was good. There's one that was more recent with Benjamin Bratt, and it was like a two movie special that was on a was it Pandemic? It might have been Pandemic or something like that. Anyway, like, they had like some next level tech stuff. Like, if you're going to do gain of function lab, it needs to be in a biohazard 4 safety level, like, facility that like really locks stuff down.
We'll put it in San Francisco. So if the people in the city have to die, if it gets out, the acceptable losses. So that was dark.
That's too much.
Humor.
Yeah, we're kidding, we're joking. But yeah, like I mean, lock it down. Like it better be like next level, like military containment facility, like stuff, so that if a failsafe fails, then it goes to its second and tertiary failsafe, and then still doesn't get out. Like the fact that that it got out ever in any lab shows you just how unserious they were taking it. So that's my thing on that. But yeah, I mean, biohazards are going to be an issue. Biochemical warfare is going to be an issue, and again, that's going to be something that AI will use because it quite explicitly will be stuff that will affect us that won't affect computerized systems, right? Like if you just suck all the atmosphere out of the earth, they don't care. If you just if you start like gas,
they need air for cooling their fans or something. But yeah, it doesn't need to be oxygen. It doesn't have to be oxygen.
Right. Exactly. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I'm praying, but in any case, like to wrap this up though, I want to say that there were some that I thought that the speech last night, there were some great victories that were put in, like basic stuff, like the fact that, you can't have men and women's sports, obviously, like that's a no-brainer win for everybody. The fact that, there's two genders, like this is like basic. Like you shouldn't even have to say this, but like the fact that we say it is great. The fact that CRT is out of schools. The fact that the fact that English is our national language. I didn't realize English wasn't our national language until a couple of last month. Apparently,
you didn't know that.
I thought it was kind of like maybe an unwritten thing, but I guess
Franklin toyed with making Greek our national language. They were so mad at the British, right? After the Revolutionary War, that they didn't want to maintain connections with them. So, right, the French, right, Lafayette wanted to, came to our aid. So it was real talk about making French the national language, and thought well, the birthplace of democracy is Greece. This was Benjamin Franklin's. Maybe Greek should be our national language, or Latin. So that's the main reason why there hasn't been a national language, because at the debate they were so mad at the British they didn't want to make English the national language.
Yeah, right? I mean, it makes sense. I knew that it hadn't happened for a long time, but I thought surely over the last 50 years. But I guess not. I never really checked up on it, but that's just funny. I mean, the fact that Zelensky finally crawled back and signed the deal, so now that we have a mineral deal. Yeah,
okay. I've heard he wanted to. I haven't heard that he had.
After all this nonsense,
over then?
Yeah, so he's okay with the mineral deal. I don't know if the peace deal is fixed, but yeah, just the fact that after all this garbage, after all this nonsense that the Democrats have spun, and then of course Zelensky has to crawl back because he doesn't have any leverage. He never did, and so he had to take it. Like, duh, this was always the case, and people this whole time. I don't know. Maybe this is something you can tell me. So maybe there's an element here that I just don't appreciate about the whole. You mentioned that if you've got the power, should you use it to bully people? But I can't see having power and not using it to the best of your ability, right? Like it just doesn't make any sense to not to hurt.
Yeah.
But just to if you're just doing business negotiations or you're defending your own nation or it's just generic stuff, how can you not use the leverage that you have? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you ever not do it?
Right. Maybe some of our watchers can chime in on this as well. But think of it like you're playing poker. Maybe you've played some poker, right? Sometime, and maybe you've got 100 times more chips than anybody else at the table, right? So you can do certain moves, right? Certain bets that give you important, but you can also be seen as a target by other people. It's like, this is a guy I can get money on.
Sure.
Yeah. This is a whale, right? I want to play at the table with the whale because I know, if I've got a good hand, he might call me when I've got the nuts or something, right? And double up. And I think that's how the U.S. is viewed a lot of times. They're whale. They're happy to try to take our money or take, what benefits them. And And when you're pushed around, when you've got a marginal hand, and all of a sudden the whale puts in something that's small for him, but is an all in for you, you have to fold, right? You kind of resent that, right? You kind of, but that's sort of what the proper role the whale at the table has to do, and he has to anyway. When
But
we come to using power, the disruptive presidents like Teddy Roosevelt, Truman, Reagan, and now Trump, we're willing to do that openly. Put a battleship in your harbor and things like that. Now, Nixon and Kennedy and others wanted to negotiate and do this stuff behind the scenes. They didn't want to be, of being too. They wanted to be sort of just tacitly accepted that we have all this power, but not be open with it. And that's the sort of quiet dignity that sort of people prefer. But Trump is sort of like, look, that's fine but you guys are just picking me off and doubling up your stats all the time and not getting mad. Part of me is I have to be able to make you fold your weaker hand, right? It's not just you always get paid off whenever you have the nuts. I also have to be paid out, both ways. So, sorry for those of you that don't follow poker. But
I like that. I like that analogy a lot.
It's a disruptive kind of thing. If you've never seen the movie, I can't really recommend it. There's a parody movie about world politics called World Police, Team America, World Police. Have you seen it?
I don't remember if I have. I have to check it out.
You've never seen Team America, World Police. Okay. There's a very crass analogy about world politics in there, and about how the role of bullies, right? Or he calls them straight up a-holes, right? No. He calls them dicks, right? Countries with the power, and how that. Anyway, so sometimes people don't like it when they do it, but it's an important function, and an important function maybe every few years to be disrupted and recognize the U.S. can be like this, can bully you around, and have people show proper respect and deference, and then we can go back to being men of quiet dignity and handle our negotiations, right? Like behind closed doors. But if you want to bring the media there, we'll get ugly and we'll get in your face and we'll bully you, right? Trump is not going to be right just because people have done it another way. I need to do it that way, and I think that's wisdom, even though it's difficult and can be off-putting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with you 100%. I like your analogy a lot. I know that FDR is like the walk softly but carry a big stick, right?
No, that was Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt. Wrong Roosevelt. But yeah, so but that having been said, like, yeah, it's one thing. I feel like America isn't in the spot where we're just the big stack. I feel it's almost more like chess, where if you've got extra material, like, and you don't use it, you're just a bad chess player, right? Like it's one thing, right? It's one thing to just to just be ahead in a game where chips are your leverage, but like where material is everything. I feel like if we don't use it, that's just stupid. And it's like you said, right? Like one of the things I noticed from my years as a manager, right, is as I was a manager, I'd come in and I can't tell you how many different stores I'd take over, districts I would take over, and every time I would move into a new district, invariably your authority is challenged. That's just part of the game, right? So you come in, you take over a new district, your new store, and of course, the first thing someone says is like, well, the last manager didn't do it this way, or something stupid like that, right? And they'll challenge your authority. But the thing is like, as a manager, you come in, you're never supposed to say, well, you need to do this because I'm your boss, right? You should never need to say that, right? But if someone presses you and you have to say it, then they're the ones that are in trouble, right? Like if you get to a point where, like, I go into a new store and I shouldn't have to say anything. Everything I'll say is going to be, would you please do this? Thank you so much. It's going to be very respectful, very deferent, But if someone comes all up in my face and is insubordinate, I'm like, all right, now I'm going to send you home for a week. Now you've pushed me over to the point where I have to explain to you that I am in fact the supervisor, right? And I think Trump's been on the back foot for most of his presidency because of all his political persecution, because of the assassination attempt, because of literally everything in the world has gone wrong for him. And he's had to be like the guy that says, all right, look, I'm the boss. And if you don't like it, get the out, I don't care. And if he didn't have to be, he would never be in this situation, right? If he didn't have to be put in that role, then you probably wouldn't hear. He probably would walk softly. But he's never had the opportunity to walk softly, unfortunately. So yeah. I don't know. It's tough to say,
It's not in his nature, but I think it's necessary, and it's uncomfortable for people that want the globalists, that want the status quo, they want to desecularize, they want postmodernism to be the prevailing approach to every social system. Obviously, we need to say the emperor has no clothes. And if you know that story, you need to stop buying the invisible material, the invisible cloth. It doesn't exist. We don't need to be ripped off anymore. Let's be honest. Let's follow common sense. Let's be safe out there. Go USA. Thank you for watching, everybody. Please subscribe. Please tell your friends to subscribe and watch some of our other content. And hopefully we'll be where you can listen to us on Spotify soon. Thanks.
Every Wednesday at 8, guys. We'll see you next week.